Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. My name is Varun Bhanot. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Magic AI. We're building the world's first AI personal trainer, and we're located right here in London. Our HQ is just by Liverpool Street.
What was it that made you start Magic AI?
So I started the business Magic AI really quite simply because I was too fat. Ate way too many kebabs, drank way too much, had no diet, no discipline in my 20s. And essentially got quite obese at one point. And I was told by a health professional I should probably do something about it sooner rather than later, or I may have health problems later on in life. I bit the bullet and hired a personal trainer, and really was just in the best kind of shape of my life. Going through that transformation, I realized how amazing personal training can be, but I realized how old-fashioned the process was. I mean, in London, you'd pay up to £100 an hour, maybe more. That was the seed of the idea, which led me to start thinking about what kind of product could fill this gap, and what could we develop that could really replicate that. And that was really where the Magic AI Mirror was born.
When did you decide that you wanted to take the leap into entrepreneurship?
So my first job coming out of university, I studied law, so the furthest thing possible from what I do now, and ended up working in a investment bank in New York for a year. I remember sitting there in my sort of first week in this sort of high-rise office, and I remember thinking, like, is this all my life is now going to be? Either I quickly figure out what it is I want to do with my life and whether it's this or not. So I ended up quitting a corporate job. And I had heard of a startup that was getting off the ground at the time. At the end of it, got a job with them, and I ended up staying there for 6 years, building that business up from the first employee to, I think we were about 60 when I left, and we'd raised about 10 or 12 million pounds in venture funding, and really learned the ropes about how to build a tech company. And it was in that 6-year period when I started thinking about whether I could use the technology that I'm learning about in my day job and applying it to this very old-fashioned type of exercise that I was doing in the evening. And that was really the point where I started thinking about starting something.
So Varun, Magic AI recently ranked 4th in the Times 100 tech list.
Yeah, it was extraordinary. Definitely felt a bit like an imposter sitting at that table of businesses who've been around for 10 years and are doing hundreds of millions in revenue. And it was definitely a pinch me moment to be sitting next to those people and being on that type of list.
Did you think about the accolades when you started?
We've definitely grown, I think, a lot quicker than I could have ever sort of thought about. I guess it just speaks to sort of putting the right foundations into place at the start and setting yourself up for growth in the early days, which is really what we spent the first nothing happened for the first 2 years after we just did so much background work to get to this point. Yeah, it's definitely amazing to be now on the other end of it and just seeing what's happened over the last 3 years.
Speaking of growth, small businesses need finance to grow, and there's a real journey that businesses do go on to do that. British Business Bank, we're delighted that you accessed our startup loans funding. So talk to me a little bit about that. What made you apply for a startup loan?
The first step to building what is the Magic AI Mirror was we had to build a prototype, and I thought that if we could build a good enough prototype, then we might be able to get some pre-orders. And if I could get some pre-orders, then maybe we might be able to go out and raise like an actual round of investment from angels and potentially some funds. So I had to sort of work backwards from there and think, well, what's the first step here? And I ended up taking a loan, a startup loan, which helped essentially build that very first prototype. And then we also used the money to work with our first software engineer to help build some of the software that goes on there. And so that loan was very critical because it helped us get that first working prototype, which was never a market-ready product. It literally just did 6 exercises. It was way too big and heavy. It was not the sort of thing you'd ever be able to sell. But we managed to get about 30 pre-orders per month, which was enough to convince investors that this is something that probably has legs if we put a little bit of cash in. We ended up raising 1.2 million in venture capital. So we had two funds come in, and the rest were all a syndicate of angels. And that wouldn't have been possible if I didn't have that first loan to build that first prototype, just to show that this thing could be real. I think it's very important to not just tell people what you're building, but show them what you're building. And it was very important to get that first version working, the MVP.
If you had a piece of advice for businesses who are reluctant to look at more equity-based types of finance, what would that be?
You need to make sure that your business is in the right place and right stage to go for an equity financing. I do think that people underestimate how far they can go initially by just raising debt. So there's obviously a startup loan. For us, it was kind of quite binary. We had no choice, but you either raise for this and raise from investors, and obviously in exchange you'd have to sell a stake of your company, or we just probably wouldn't have got to the start line. I don't think that's the case for all businesses. I think you can get far by bootstrapping, but it really depends on what your size and stage of business is.
One of the benefits of startup loans is also the mentorship. You're obviously very comfortable with finance. Did you discover or find there were any non-financial benefits of taking a startup loan?
The British Business Bank, who've always done great collabs with us in terms of promotional opportunities, and also they always put us forward for press and potential like commentary in PR, which has always been really beneficial over the last few years. And also just the network from some of the events that have been put on over the years, and the other entrepreneurs and companies I've got to meet along the way has really been fantastic.
So talking about support, you've recently welcomed your second child, is that correct?
Yes, 15 days ago.
So it's
you can tell I'm tired. Yeah.
So it's no mean feat running a business, particularly not one which is as successful as yours. So you have 2 children at home, Anisha, who you had some time doing unhoused.org.
Yeah, we set up a social enterprise about 6-7 years ago, which, I mean, it's a complete non-for-profit, but it's a bit like an Amazon, but for clothing and supplies for those people who are like rough sleeping. So people can buy a product for themselves, like warm jumpers, shirts, socks, and for every one that we sell, we will then donate one to the homeless. So the price of one will cover 2. So it's a self-sustaining sort of online shop, essentially. My wife does actually spend more time on that than I can anymore. But it's been a phenomenal. That was a phenomenal journey, actually, and it's cool to do something innovative and apply some of my knowledge from the tech world to something that traditionally doesn't get much innovation, which is like the sort of social enterprise sector.
When you say innovation, are you talking about the self-cleaning hoodie?
We have the shop itself, which is unhoused.org. That's the website where you can buy stuff, which is pretty interesting. You can also like buy haircuts, and you can buy Starbucks coffee, and then we donate one. So that was pretty innovative in itself. And then we also innovated on a piece of fabric where it was a self-cleaning type of clothing. So the idea is that if there's any spillage or dirt, it would repel it using like a nanotech fiber. I think the future for us on House.org is very much like trying to not just do supplies, but also like looking at more structural ways that we can actually just alleviate rough sleeping in the first place.
What's the most difficult thing? Building tech, building habits, or raising children?
I mean, I have great support, at home, which has really enabled me to be present for the work stuff at the same time. It is hard, but I think you just get better at learning how to juggle and prioritize. But yeah, I don't get much time off at the moment.
What support have you had in terms of the businesses you've been running?
We now have a great senior team at the company. They really are owners of their individual department, and that's really helped kind of spread the risk and pressure on everything landing on me. Many of whom are angels who've started or exited their own companies. They've been very, very helpful to lean on for advice.
So you obviously like to disrupt spaces, and we are now in a real AI evolution period across sectors in terms of what's happening in education, all across all industries and places. But still many small businesses are reluctant to adopt AI. So at the British Business Bank, we have some evidence that shows things like cost, lack of digital skills, turning small businesses away from embracing AI. What would your advice be to them?
I think AI is it's become sort of a catch-all for just so many different things at the moment. I think for a lot of businesses, the big opportunity is being able to embed AI into like your daily or weekly processes. For example, our engineers in the past, all they would do is coding, and now AI has enabled the coding part to actually be done by the AI, and now the engineers are there to review it, to set the parameters, to put it through quality assurance, and that has meant that we as a business have not had to necessarily hire as many engineers in the immediate term. We can basically do the job of potentially 10 engineers with only 6. So for example, we're about to launch a mobile app, which traditionally would have taken many months to build. And we've been able to do it, I think, in about 3 weeks, which is about to go live. So I think there's a big opportunity for businesses to realign their resources a little bit more and be a bit smarter with how they run a lot of their internal operations. If you're a high growth business, you might be balancing that with being profitable. Which is often the trade-off. Like you can grow quickly, but are you going to be profitable quickly? And I think resources and tools like AI will probably help a lot of British businesses get to profitability quicker and manage their cost base better, which is really one of the most exciting things here.
A new app is in the works. You've got a number of accolades under your belt. Was there ever a time when you thought Magic AI wouldn't work?
The second round of funding, I think we came up against a very difficult fundraising market. I think the UK, and well, indeed across the world, was in quite a tough spot for raising funds in general. I had to go to, I think, about 150 investors, like individual funds, to try to raise, patch together. I think it was we're trying to raise about 3 million. I think in the end we managed to get 2 yeses from like literally fund number 149 on my spreadsheet and number 150, and ended up closing about $5 million. And at that point, I think we had about 6 weeks left of money in our bank account. The business would have tanked otherwise. So we came very close to it. So yeah, we've come very close to it. I think every startup's probably had a story like that at some point. But that's kind of the nature of the game that you're in. It is a roller coaster. You've got to be ready for it.
So investor rejection is a stark reality for many businesses today. What's the best piece of advice you can give to founders who are hearing no?
So I think there's something about separating the signal from the noise, meaning if you go to 100 investors, they'll tell you different things. There is going to be some signal in there where there's going to be some truth to what they're saying. So what I would do every time I got a rejection is I would try to, disregard anything I thought was noise and not really that helpful, but take that signal about what would be like a helpful bit of advice to integrate back into the pitch deck, the model. We weren't particularly strong on this part. Okay, maybe I need to beef up that part, make it a little bit more convincing. You should also run your fundraise process like that, where you then start by pitching initially to the investors you don't want to necessarily, you wouldn't really care whether they came in or not. And they're the ones you should be testing the pitch on and taking their signal and trying to implement that into your pitch process, so that once you get to the investors who you do want to invest, you'd be in a much stronger position. That's what I would say. Try to take the parts that you think are important and relevant and disregard the others.
If there was one thing that you know now that you didn't know when you first started that you would like to share, what would that be?
I think I underestimated how hard being a founder is. It is literally like, you're jumping off a cliff and then, trying to build a parachute on the way down. But I think equally the highs have been very high whenever we've won something or been featured somewhere and or hit various, milestones. We really do try to celebrate them as a team. We have a whole culture of celebration in the company. Yeah, I would say to any founder, just be ready, because it's going to be quite a journey.
Let's talk about resilience. It's quite a journey, as you've just said there. How do you keep going?
Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. I think we're the fastest growing AI hardware company in the UK, and I know nothing about AI and I know nothing about hardware. I was a lawyer. But what I've come to notice is that other entrepreneurs who have done very, very well they work really, really hard. That's the one thing I would say, is that you've just got to have grit in this game, because often the winners are actually the ones who stay in the game the longest. They're not necessarily the ones who were the most talented to start off with. And I think that's why we are where we are now.
Are there any key pieces of information that you've learned in either accessing a startup loan or raising finance that you think it would be useful for other people who are embarking on that journey to know?
I was never very good, funnily enough, at numbers. I think I was mentioning this earlier. The business was sort of ride or die depending on how strong and realistic your financial model is. And I think as part of the startup loan, I had to submit a financial model for what I thought would happen, which was also the first time I'd ever done a financial model. In fact, I don't think I even knew what one was before that. And from that moment, I started realizing where the key levers are in the business, what's important. Is Facebook and Instagram going to be where we put all of our marketing chips, or is it going to be retail, or is it, and figuring out all of those things. So I would say to any founder, just don't underestimate the importance of knowing your numbers and building a very strong financial model.
How do you manage tech and innovation with getting people comfortable with having this technology in their house?
You're basically launching or trying to sell a new species of something. So we're not selling a better treadmill or a better bike. It's literally like a whole new species of product. There is a big education piece around like teaching the market about what this thing even does, and then trying to sell them on why they might need it. This flows into our marketing. So no one really types in on Google AI personal training mirror. We lean more into Meta and Meta ads. Nowadays, I think what's helped is, which I didn't see coming, was that there was going to be this big boom in AI, and we were building this business since 2021 before the whole kind of explosion of AI and integrating AI into your daily life. So when we say to people, oh, it's an AI personal trainer, people are not that surprised by that. They're like, oh, okay, it's like that AI thing I've been hearing about, but it's applied to exercise. The sell is a lot easier than it probably would have been maybe 5 years ago.
If you were projecting to 5-10 years ahead, are you thinking that far ahead?
So for us, I think international expansion will be a very big piece. The second side, though, is actually just investing more deeply into our technology.
What's the highlight? Why is it worth doing this?
The big thing for us is the fact that we get to wake up every day and we look at our community and we look at the transformation and the impact we're having on their lives. People are living longer because of this. They're able to recover from injury. People have had kids and this has enabled them to get up out of bed. We've got people recovering from cancer who've been able to get moving again for the first time, and that the flexibility and the accessibility of our product has enabled that to happen. And those are the stories that keep us going and remind us why we're doing what we're doing more than anything. So I'd say to any entrepreneur who's thinking about going on that journey is you always remember your why and start with that, because that's the thing that will keep you going through the highs and lows and remind you about that mission that you're on. And lastly, just go for it. As I said, you do need grit, you do need determination. But you don't have to see the whole staircase. You just start on the first step and the rest of it will emerge afterwards.
Varun, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us on Backstory.
Thank you for having me.